The Exeter Impact podcast is returning for a second series. In Series 2, we talk primarily to colleagues working at our Penryn campus in Cornwall, making a significant impact. The podcast is developed and hosted by me, Emma Sheriff, Impact Evidence and Evaluation Manager for Policy and Systems at the university. So welcome to the next episode of the podcast. In this episode, we welcome Professor Nathan Mayne. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Your research is an exciting field which involves the Earth's climate through time, solar system, planet climates and exoplanets. Can you tell us about the key research projects you're working on at the moment which are generating impact beyond the university?
Yeah, certainly. So I'm glad you find the research exciting. I do too. There's almost two strands, I think, of impact. So I'll start with, I guess, what you might term a kind of more academic one. So we work closely with the Met Office. Of course, the Met Office is very much focused on Earth's weather and climate. But by sort of working with them and applying some of the tools that they've developed and kind of adapting them, we sort of put them through very harsh tests. We model quite exotic environments. If anyone knows anything about Mars, it can be a very dusty planet, huge dust storms across the whole planet. Now, if you try to model that with the same sort of tools that you use to model Earth, it's almost like a sort of extreme version of, say, a volcanic ash cloud on Earth. So we get these kind of pullbacks into the main model and the main approaches that help. And yeah, I think it would be overstating it to say that, we're revolutionizing Earth climate and weather. We're not, but it's definitely helping and supporting them develop those tools and make more accurate weather forecasts effectively. So the second strand is much more kind of passion driven, and it's about engaging people. And that sort of comes from me wanting to make research and higher education kind of accessible to everyone. And I remember growing up, I didn't really know what a degree was, and I got a bit lucky. It's a common story. The sort of a really good A-level teacher that fueled my curiosity. But I think without those lucky interventions, I would never have even realized these opportunities were available. It's not about just showing people opportunities. You also have to show them that those opportunities apply to them also, and they can do it. Our research, particularly with the exoplanets, basically sort of trying to find aliens, is, it's exciting and it can bring people in. And I try to use that not only as a conduit to get people interested in the research, but also to say, look, this could be for you too if you choose, or any other career that they might think is not available or open to them. And it's actually a story which links very well with this podcast, I think. So as I mentioned, sort of my early curiosity was fueled by some A-level teachers that I really gelled with. And I wanted to understand, of course, I can articulate this well now. I couldn't when I was 15. I basically wanted to understand the fundamental laws that give rise to all of this complexity. Over the years, I've realised that I could have taken sort of many different subject paths, but physics was drawing me in. I finished my degree and I just didn't feel like it was enough. I wanted to learn more. I wanted to keep understanding how things work. And I was working a lot on astrophysics, so a lot of studies of the evolution of stars, how they're formed and evolve. And that was really interesting. But I started to feel like it was disconnected in some way to what was going on Earth. I still had that opportunity for engagement, but I wanted to contribute more. And when I saw the opportunity to work on sort of planetary climates, other planets, and the opportunity to work with the Met Office, it really, really excited me because it gave me that opportunity to do what I loved, which was looking at these kind of exotic situations, these fundamental laws, but also in some small way contribute back into something here on Earth and tangible, and also something that I think we all need to think about, which is obviously, the changing climate.
And what would you say is the most rewarding part of your work at the university?
So another real highlight for me is when you go, particularly with younger students, where you give a presentation or I just have a chat with a group of them, and then you see that kind of excitement and curiosity. It really reminds me how lucky I am. And actually, interestingly, I find this sort of teenage years the most interesting one, because I'll go to a school and I'll give like a talk and have a chat with the students. And if you took a picture, you would think that they absolutely hated it, because they just have that sort of... And then afterwards, they'll just bombard me with questions and I'll get email follow-up. So you almost, it takes quite a bit of kind of confidence to sort of think, well, they look like they're not enjoying it, but I'm sure some of them are. But that's really rewarding when you realize that by sharing something, by sharing your passion for something and connecting with someone, you've opened a pathway for them and they've thought to themselves, oh, I like that, I could do that. And actually, it doesn't necessarily mean that they might want to do astrophysics, even if it's, medicine or something, but just that opening that pathway, that feels really great.
Moving on now to think about that knowledge exchange with your stakeholders. So you work with young people, but also with industry partners and other organisations. Can you tell us a bit more about your work with them specifically? So how you've engaged with them as part of your research process and the knowledge exchange that you've led?
Yeah. So I think I've spoken a lot about, sort of passion and curiosity. I think the other kind of key part is collaboration. My subject is complex. I admit that. And I have done it for many years and I still don't understand things and it's still hard. But it's also respecting that there are experts in all different fields. I started to do more and more work, particularly on the engagement side. And I started to realize that I needed support in expertise in how to make that more effective, more impactful. And I could talk about my work, my passion, but I didn't know enough about how you do that in various different ways. So I started to partner with particularly science communication centres like We the Curious in Bristol, because, that's their main sort of reason for being, is to communicate these things. Actually, more recently, I've been working with the Exeter Science Centre. It's so great to have that locally, two great people, Alice and Natalie. I think there's a real opportunity there to engage with them. And really, that allowed me to lean on their expertise. What I always felt I could do is talk to people about how I feel, but I was less good at understanding how you might make something more involved for people. And then the other kind of knowledge exchange I did was then with the graphics design companies. That was great. I work a lot with the Met Office as well. And in all of these cases, I think you have to recognise up front that working across sectors or research disciplines or anything out of your comfort zone is hard.
Yes.
And a lot of that is communication and being humble and being prepared to not understand what the other person is saying, even if they're saying something quite simple. So working with the visualization company, for example, they had expertise that, I couldn't hope to accrue on how you would visualize a planet at 3,000 degrees orbiting a star. Maybe I could do that in my head, but how do you communicate that to someone on a screen? But then, of course, they didn't understand about the physical properties of these things. So that interaction was great. And it was excellent, actually, that the director of that company I work with, Engine House in Cornwall, Jason Robbins, the director, was so excited about and he, sort of learned a lot about exoplanets. And I think he's become a bit of a, sort of closet astronomer in the background, maybe. I think impact as a researcher can feel quite lonely because it's a very important thing and you really want to contribute and do it, but it's something that perhaps many of us don't know how to do or we haven't expertise in. So I think the best thing you can do is just to collaborate and ask. And some of those collaborations might come to nothing. Some of those interactions might lead to nothing, but some of them could lead to something really special. You look at the Met Office, it's a very complex institute with many, many employees. You could kind of paraphrase their job to getting the Earth's weather and climate accurately. And then my motivation is slightly different. I want to understand planetary climates and whether there's life elsewhere. But those two align with mutual benefit. And it's about understanding where you have that alignment. And then it means that everyone's effort is helping them get where they want to go. Maybe slight diversions, but that's okay. And it's all contributing to a bigger aim.
So I wonder, you've worked with some world-leading partners in industry. What are your reflections on working with them? And what do you think's come out of that for you?
That's a good question. I've worked internationally with very large collaborations. And I guess you might call it an overhead that there becomes a lot of kind of organization. But I think it comes back actually to that alignment. What I've personally really enjoyed is the fact that you can have these sort of very different entities. Some of them, say, universities, some of them institutes. Like I've worked a lot with the NASA GISS Institute and NASA Ames and actually a few of the different labs. And they all have their different structures, their different bureaucracies, let's be honest, and there isn't sort of technical barriers. But again, it's finding that kind of alignment of what you want to do. I think that is about also dissemination and ambassadors. So when I've worked with a lot of these international sort of large institutes, it's been really exciting and fun. But it's also been great to realize that I could feed into a message that they also want to communicate, be that a research message, be that pushing something forward. I mean, a lot of the collaborations we do using the most recent space telescope, the James Webb Space Telescope, for example, they're very large collaborations. You have lots of different people, but they're all unified around one thing, which is we would like to understand, this planet or this process. So I think it's maybe boringly, it sort of comes back down to connecting with people. I love my research subject, but I mean, really what I spend most of my time doing is interacting with people. I guess at this point, it just occurs to me something that I think was really important that I said a few seconds ago. Impact can, you'll know better than me, impact can take actually really broad sort of different guises.
Yes.
And there may be some people, for example, whose direct research is going to have a direct impact. There may be something where the research leads later to an impact, maybe a technological advance or something like that. There's some things I've talked about with co-creation and engagement. I think the two things that are really important that I've learned is looking for opportunities for impact, not looking for impact, if that makes sense. That I think it doesn't work if you try to engineer something that you don't feel passionate about, that isn't a sort of natural conduit or outcome. So it's more about continuing what you do and what you're great at and looking for partnerships and opportunities. And that impact can be very surprising. It can be non-obvious, I think. I had a career where I've been lucky to engage with some incredibly clever people, and I'm using clever very sort of broadly. But if you look at the history of any subject, it turns out things are complicated, and we couldn't just plan them all out for 4 years and do that thing, right? So you can go in with a well-laid plan if you did, like you said, I'm going to do this, this, and this. But it turns out things are complicated. So you have to sort of be agile for those opportunities, I think.
It would be really useful to know what your key recommendations to colleagues who have been invited by their department to draft a case study. What would your sort of recommendations be for them in going into this process new, writing their impact case study, and what you would kind of recommend that they do first, or they ensure they cover within that?
Two broader things I've said, I think, running throughout. First one is do not forget the reason you're doing it. Not that you want to write an impact case, but the reason you want to have impact. And that has to be core to it. And that will enable you to stay true. I think a lot of the times when we present these cases, you can write as well as you like, but I think you can also feel how someone, their energy, they feel about it, how they present it, how excited they are. So definitely stay true to your passion. What is it you want to achieve? And then there's the other strand that I've said many times is reach out and collaborate. Don't be alone, with that caveat of making sure that you still, as I said, lots of people will give you input, but you have to decide what's best for what you want to present. But you need help. Usually these are complicated things to do. You need expertise that may well be out of your field. So just reach out to people and develop those relationships and get help. So passion and collaboration.
How did you find the process of preparing the narrative, gathering the evidence from multiple stakeholders?
In my particular case, this was an impact case study where, as I mentioned earlier, it was an opportunity for impact. It was something I was doing already. The data collection, that was really, really hard because a lot of it was retrospective. It was activity that I had done that wasn't necessarily planned for impact. As I said, it was something I was doing anyway. So a lot of that was about getting support from people, and that was the most important thing, getting logistical and skilled support on management of that data and collection of that data. Now, that was okay because we could do some over a period of time and allow us to use that as a kind of indicative of the things that we had done before anyway, if that makes sense.
Yes.
So in a way, it was okay that we hadn't been as rigorous about our data collection in some of the stuff I was doing early.
So you've mentioned looking ahead. On that note, what impacts do you think in your research you hope to achieve in the future?
So following on for the two strands that I spoke about, one, I guess, are more kind of practical. I'm now working very closely with a researcher at Bristol as well, Denis Sergeyev, who's leading things there, and the Met Office on their next generation model. So it's going to replace the model framework they've been using for many, many years. And because that's happening now, we've been able to get involved very early and already have, I think, quite a positive impact on how that's going with our different perspective, our different uses, our different applications. So that's very exciting to be part of something. And the Met Office are designing that as a community tool, much sort of very open community tool, and that's really great. So I find that very exciting scientifically. Obviously, finding it incredibly exciting being part of this kind of era of discovery in exoplanets. We have all these, well, particularly the James Webb Space Telescope going up, and we can have all these more scientific impacts, understanding how things work. That, of course, that's amazing. And then on the engagement side, I am actually trying to widen my partnerships. So I think something that I think other people recognise as well, but certainly it's been on my mind for a while. Exeter is a fairly affluent city, and the university is a very, very well respected. I'm very proud of working at the University of Exeter. I think it's an excellent university, but it does sit in a region of deprivation along many axes. And I think one of the things we have is the leverage of a campus further into the southwest in Penryn and Falmouth. And coming from the southwest, coming from Camborne, I think there's more opportunities to work with people to use that as a bit of a beacon and make things better. From my point of view, coming from a very challenging socioeconomic background, I often felt that initiatives to involve me were sort of done to me, rather than with me. But I think we have a unique opportunity to do that. I kind of just want to make things a little bit better for the people that come after me. There's this old quote about if you want shade, plant a tree, which I've always found really beautiful. I would love it for people that come after to not have an easier, but have it better, a better situation.
That sounds perfect. That's the perfect quote for this episode, I think. So thank you so much, Nathan, for what has been a really interesting and valuable episode and a really interesting conversation all the way through. And we wish you the very best of luck in your research impact in the future. I can't wait to see what you do next.
Thank you so much for inviting me on. It's been great to share it. And see you again in the future, maybe.
Exeter staff can access the university's Impactful Researcher training series and find details of our impact surgeries via the episode links for support to plan impact in readiness for writing an impact case study.